Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Farhana Sethi and excited to share that Microsoft been working on Fabric for some time now, and we can see what is Microsoft Fabric as they announced and showcase it in MS Build 2023. Fabric will truly transform how analytics projects are delivered. Because customers today are often locked into proprietary vendor formats, they have to spend inordinate amounts of time and money integrating data across vendor products. And this complexity causes data fragmentation, which is poisonous to organizations seeking to embrace a data culture. However, there's a silver lining. It's clear that analytics projects have consistent pattern. They invariably require data integration, data engineering, data warehousing, business intelligence, etc. Now, Microsoft has had leading products in each of these areas for a long time. But with Fabric, Microsoft is providing the market with the first truly unified analytics system based on one copy of data and a unified security model. Microsoft is taking a bold bet on Delta Lake and Parquet as an open standard format. Think about what this means for customers. In addition to avoiding vendor lock-in, one copy of data shared across each of the Fabric analytical engines means customers will dramatically reduce data silos and data integration costs. Of course, this is done with deep integration with Microsoft Office Teams and AI Copilot experiences. Now let's talk about Direct Lake storage mode for Power BI datasets in Fabric. Direct Lake, remember the name. Power BI datasets have had direct query and import storage modes for a very long time. Users interact with visuals in Power BI reports and they submit DAX queries to the Power BI dataset. Direct query avoids having to copy data, but typically suffers performance degradation by having to submit federated SQL queries to other database systems that are just not as efficient for BI-style queries. Import mode, on the other hand, delivers blazing fast performance because queries are answered from columnar data store that is highly optimized for BI queries. But of course, the data has to be copied during refresh, introducing management overhead. Enter Direct Lake mode. By querying data directly from the lake, Power BI datasets enjoy blazing fast query performance on a par with import mode without having to copy a single row of data. Now I know what you're thinking. How is this physically possible? It literally sounds too good to be true. It just so happens that Parquet is also a columnar storage format that works perfectly with Microsoft Engine. Let me make this clear. Power BI is moving to Delta Lake and Parquet as its native storage format. This changes everything. Let's run a Direct Lake demo. I'll start off in the Fabric Lakehouse warehouse. Here you can see the Parquet files in the lake. I simply click on the New Dataset button, select the tables I'm interested in, and I immediately land in the recently announced Power BI Datasets web modeling experience. I didn't even have to leave the browser. I can create relationships and measures. Here's the kicker. I can click on the New Report button and create a beautiful Power BI report directly from the lake. Notice I didn't have to perform a refresh. There's almost 4 billion rows of data in this table and I get instant response times. To summarize, it unlocked massive data with blazing fast performance and I didn't have to copy a single row of data. I didn't have to manage ETL jobs into the data warehouse. I didn't have to manage data loads into the Power BI dataset. It uses concrete, beautiful Power BI reports in seconds without any data duplication. Now let's switch gears and talk about developer experiences in Power BI. Developer mode enables source control and CI/CD integration for Power BI desktop author datasets and reports. Microsoft is providing native integration from the Power BI service that can be optionally integrated with Power BI deployment pipelines. Instead of saving to a PBIX file, you simply save to a pod that project which places the artifact metadata on the file system so you can check into source control. Now, with Power BI Desktop, you not only have the option to save your work as a single PBIX file, but you can also save it as a Power BI project. Use save option that will make this top save your developments into a folder. Finally, in blocking source control and collaboration using Power BI Desktop. From an open Power BI reports, you can now go to File Save As and select the Power BI project Save As type, and Desktop from now on will save all your developments into a folder. This is a folder with a Power BI project in it. It contains one folder for the dataset and one folder for the report. If I go back to the desktop and I create a new measure, Desktop will save the new measure in the model definition within the dataset folder. I can use Tablet Editor, the open source community tool, to open the model definition file and view the measure creative on desktop. Now let's do the opposite. Let's create something in Tablet Editor and see it reflected in desktop. Let's duplicate the product table and save. If I go back to the desktop, I don't see that the new table, because desktop, it's not aware from outside changes. I need to close desktop and reopen the Power BI project file. I'll be able to see the new table created in Tablet Editor. But though there's something interesting. If I go to the data view, all my tables have data, but if I click on that new table doesn't have data. Why? Because Tablet Editor didn't refresh any data, just created a new table definition. But notice also something, so Power BI Desktop, because it's working in a Power BI project, detected that I have some tables that have incomplete or no data and is asking to refresh now. If I click refresh, is also smart enough to only refresh that single new table that I created from Tablet Editor. Now that Power BI Desktop can work on a folder, I can initialize a Git repo and enable version control and collaboration with other developers. I can do that using Visual Studio Code. From the Power BI project folder, I can open Visual Studio Code and initialize, and you'll get a repo. From now on, because I have a Git enabled folder, I can track and version control any change I make in desktop. For example, if I change a measure, I can easily track that change in Git. Visual Studio Code will show me that I have a file div in my model div file. Now, to enable collaboration, I need to use Azure DevOps. I can go to Azure DevOps and I can create a new repo. Let's call it the mode. I need to configure this remote Git repo URL back in Visual Studio Code and publish my branch. This Visual Studio Code will take care of syncing my local development into Azure DevOps. Here now I can enable collaboration and have multiple developers working on the same Power BI project using Power BI Desktop. They only need to be connected to the same Azure DevOps repo. But it didn't stop here. It will also enable you to sync a Git repo to a workspace in the service. For that, you need to go to the workspace settings, where you will find an option called Git integration that will allow you to connect the workspace to an Azure DevOps Git repo. Let's select the Azure DevOps organization and the projects, the repo and branch we were working, and click on Connect and Sync. Just like that, it just enabled that two-way synchronization between the workspace and a Git repo in Azure DevOps. It will start by synchronizing the content from Git into the workspace, creating a report and a dataset artifact. I must refresh the dataset because in Git, there is no data or the metadata encodes. I can also make changes in the workspace and synchronize those changes into Git. Let's make a small edit in the sales report and change the background color of these cards into red and save. Also, let's create a new report and create a very simple report, save it to the workspace. I want you to notice two things. The first one is the syndication in the toolbar in the source control, where I can click and I can see changes that are from the workspace into Git, and I can see that they have a modification in the sales reports, and I have a new report called Reports from Service. I can click on both changes. I can undo these changes if I want, but I'm not going to do that. I will commit and I will provide a message, and let's hit commit. The service is going to synchronize both changes into Git, and you can also notice in the status bar, I can see that. My workspace is connected to the main branch. I can see the last time it synced, and I also have a link that will take me to the commit where I can click, and this will take me into Azure DevOps, and it will tell me exactly what have changed. Now, let's go back to my local machine. If I go back to my local folder, I can only see the sales that are set in the sales report. I don't have the report that was created in the service because this is still in Git, but I can open Visual Studio Code and I can do a Git pull, and Visual Studio Code will sync the content from Git into my local machine. If I go back to the folder, I can see that they have my new reports created from the service. Of course, I can open this back in desktop and I'll be able to see the change that I did in the service, that switch of the background color. But I can also open the report directly by navigating to the report folder and opening the definition file, and Power BI Desktop will open the service created report for local authoring, but this time connected to the local dataset that will also be in full edit mode, where I can view and edit measures, transform data, or even go to the data view to explore the dataset data. This is it. The new Power BI project save option that together with Git integration will allow collaboration, source control, and automatic deployment into your Power BI project. One of the things Microsoft have been doing recently is they are making some changes to the model view. In model view, you have your familiar view of all the tables in the diagram and you have them listed over here in the data pane. But now Microsoft is introducing this new model pivot, and this gives you full view of all the semantic objects in your model. Here I can see my roles, I can see all the relationships, perspectives, and all the measures, even if they're all in different tables. I know you're going to be excited about this one, but we also can now have calculation groups listed. Not only can you see these calculation groups, but we can actually come in and now for the first time in desktop actually see the calculation items. If I click on it, I can actually edit it here right in desktop, so I can actually edit and create calc groups right in desktop. This model view is like the field list that we know for the report view, but this is like the field list for the model view where I can see all of the semantic model objects in one place, including even the calculation groups and calculation items. They're so useful for these large models with complex calculations. The formula bar occasionally is a little bit constrained when I'm authoring these really complex calculations with lots of interdependencies between measures. You may have noticed that there is a fourth view there available in desktop, and that is introducing the DAX query view. Here I can write any DAX query on this model and run it right here in desktop. Here I have one that is showing me the profit margin by fiscal year. I'm going to hit run and I can see that run right here. This measure, now it's not only for measures. I can also come down to any of my data tables. Here's my customer. I can right click and I have a quick query here also to give me the top 100 rows, which would be really helpful for those of you in direct query scenarios where you don't have that data view, and then you can also get down to an individual column. If I wanted to see what countries do we have in this model, I have a quick query for that and we can come in and do distinct values. Let me go ahead and run this. Now you can see them all generated for you. There were so many different ways to generate these DAX queries because a lot of the DAX queries are actually generated by the report visuals. Occasionally, you might even want to intercept the DAX queries generated by the report visuals, for example, for debugging purposes. As you know, more advanced users will go to the performance analyzer and get to copy the query out of there, but now Microsoft have made just as easy as the quick queries. You can right-click any visual, go to Inspect Visual, and now that DAX query is over in the DAX query view and ran, so you can go ahead and take whatever steps you need to take now. Because it's so tightly integrated in desktop, not only will it do the visual in this state, but I can actually filter it and then do the Inspect Visual. It brings the filter. Up here you can see that it brings that filter with it and you see how it is applied to the visual. Finally, we can also get down to an individual data point and inspect just that data point to see the query behind it. I actually didn't write that first query either. I had Copilot in PowerBI perform it. Here we can say, show me profit margin % by fiscal year. It will generate the query for me. It's conversational. As soon as I've written that one, it's going to actually suggest another prompt and another query. Because I already did it by year, maybe it thinks, well, maybe I want to see it by quarter next, and it will do that for me. It's conversational. And it's taken your instructions that was specified in English and it translated them effectively to DAX. You know, some individuals who you would have thought DAX is their native language actually. Then others are comfortable providing instructions in English and having the system generate the DAX for us. But some other individuals, they may not have English as their first language. Actually speak to it in whatever language that they are comfortable with. Here I have a prompt in German, and as you can see, it took that prompt no problem and wrote a query based off of what I had in German here. Then not only will it do the first query, but now it's going to continually prompt in German. Because it saw that I was speaking to it in German, it thought maybe I was actually interested in only the customers in Germany. That is its next step. It's going to continue to do that. It's going to continue to provide prompts, narrowing in now into Berlin. So it's quite chatty and it's quite keen to have a conversation with you, and it's detected that it believes your native language is German, so it's going to have a conversation with you in German. This will transform the way we work. Now, something about these AI copilots with regard to the Microsoft products. They are now becoming ubiquitous across Microsoft products. Let me show you a report that I had published earlier. Here we have also a copilot. If I click on this, it's going to open up a Copilot pane. Now first it's going to actually suggest some prompts based off of the data already sees. But I can still just put in whatever prompt I want. Here I'm going to go ask it to tell me about the sales performance in Australia. Immediately it's given me a summary of the sales performance. You can have a conversation with the report. Ask it how to increase sales for the company. We just go in here and we can ask it how it's going to increase the sales further. It came up with a little business plan. It's giving you a customer demographic, which countries to target in your marketing promotion. I don't have any slicers on this report. Well, I have some slices but none for country. I can actually ask Copilot to filter the report to Australia. We can take a further look. It's going to ask me permission to apply the filter, and it's going to do that. The way it did is it actually used the filter pane. Because you didn't have a slicer, it actually used a filter pane and filtered the report to Australia. This is really helpful because some users may not even know there is a filter pane, and even those that do are going to have to go and find Australia in the list of values. This is just so smooth, so it's so easy, especially for users who may have not seen this particular report. I could really use some TLDR summary of the report. We actually have another Copilot that actually may be better suited for that task. Here we have a visual Copilot that I can keep on the report even after. So the pane will just be for me, but here I can actually now use a prompt that my report consumers can use. So let's go ahead and change this one to, let's say, to give me 20-word summary of key takeaways, and let's use some emojis this just like that we have our summary built in. This summary is going to change when new data comes through this system. So it's a dynamic summary for users who are viewing this report for the first time. They can get a head start on what the report is about. It's such a great productivity tool. This will really change the way that we author models and we interact with reports. Just changes everything. Lastly, let's summarize the important Power BI announcements. Direct Lake Datasets in Fabric is in public preview. Power BI Desktop Developer Mode public preview is coming to a release very soon. Azure Analysis Services to Fabric automated migration is generally available. Not only migration to Power BI Premium, but now you can take your semantic models from Azure Analysis Services all the way to Fabric with just a few clicks and align with the Microsoft BI product roadmap. Data modeling in the Power BI service is in public preview. Like you saw me create the direct link dataset in the web modeling experience, you can do so for other datasets too. The optimized ribbon for Power BI Desktop is generally available. Unlock big data with optimized report authoring experiences. Paginated report drill-through is in public preview. This is a commonly used feature for SQL Server reporting services, so removes a barrier when migrating from on-premises to Fabric. The MongoDB connected for Power BI is now in public preview. Hybrid tables is generally available. Unlock massive data for interactive analysis with real-time streaming capabilities. And lastly, Azure Log Analytics integration for fine-grained logging and auditing of Power BI datasets engine events is now generally available. With that, thank you all and we'll see you next time.